Hi everybody, this is Mucha Marapa from Matrix Global Media, and welcome to Six of the Best, where we are talking about what I like to call the social media cluster, which consists of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, your blog, and podcasting. And I'm delighted to have who I can only describe as the leading authority on podcasting, and it is Cliff Ravenscraft. Cliff, thanks ever so much for joining me for part two here. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, I'm glad to be back and continue to share some more valuable information with those listening.
Okay, great. All right. Well, Cliff, I need to give you a bit of background information now because as I sort of intimated, had created a report called Six of the Best, covering that social media cluster. And I need to start by saying I am probably, or I have been, as much a social media skeptic as anyone. It's quite ironic that I'm turning around and putting something out here, but the reason is that I believe social media, of course, has a role to play. I think it's different how the small business should go about it. And I also believe that social media is a form of marketing for the small business. I mean, if you're Levi's jeans or your Jaguar cars or your Budweiser or your British Airways or something else like that, you can afford to bring in a social media manager, pay them $50,000 a year and just get them to sit there and do what they do. And I'm really not meaning to disrespect these people for what they're doing. However, for us, for that smaller business, that person who needs to sort of, really have every day count and every hour in the day count for what they're doing, I've always felt that, we need to be a little bit more cute in the way which we go after our social media and how much time we apply to it. And I do believe that podcasting has been such an underutilized form of marketing in general. But I suppose the first thing that we need to do, and it's a sort of line that I like to use, Cliff, you need to speak to me as though I'm a 5-year-old. What exactly is podcasting? When we talk about podcasting, what are we talking about?
All right. So podcasting, the easiest way for me to describe this, and I'll try to keep my 6-year-old daughter in mind. She just turned 6 yesterday.
Okay.
So here's the situation. Podcasting is where somebody records their voice or they record a video, and it turns into this digital file that people you can give to people. But the thing is you want to make sure that people can have it anywhere in the world. So what we do is we're going to basically take this digital recording of our voice or video that we've put together. We're going to upload that to the internet, and that's going to be online. And when that file is online, that means anybody and everybody in the world can get it. But here's the thing. We've put that file online, but how do people know how to get it? And so it would be the same as me when I bought my house. I have an address, and anybody in the world can do what? They can send me a letter. But how do they get to know what my address is? Well, I have to actually publish that. I have to tell people what my address is, and then all of a sudden people can send me letters. So what you have to do is you have to create I would consider a home on the web, and I would recommend having a website that has an RSS feed attached to it, such as a WordPress site. If you already have a static site and you're not really interested in moving it over to a blog site, you can actually create a secondary site that is just for your blogging and your podcasting efforts. But basically what you have is you have a website on the web that now all of a sudden Google, if people were searching for content related to the topics that you blog about or podcast about or do video about, all of a sudden now people do a search online via Bing, Google, Yahoo, whatever the case may be. Now all of a sudden these search engines have found your site, and now they can point people to you. And when people come to your site, you've actually made it to where you took that file that was uploaded to the internet, and you made it to where people could actually come to your site and they can click a button and hit play, and now it plays. And so and by the way, I'm very big on audio podcasting over video podcasting in a very big way. And if you're interested down the road here, we can talk about why that is. But the thing is now people can be listening to your voice. So all of a sudden, somebody's done a search on, what is a virtual assistant? and now they've come across your site, and now all of a sudden you have a blog post that has an audio attachment that says, what is a virtual assistant? Now you can actually hear in my voice my explanation of what a virtual assistant is and how I've used a virtual assistant in my own small business. And wow, now all of a sudden you're not just reading my words on the page, but you're hearing my voice, already developing a much deeper connection with me than you would a regular textual blogger.
Interesting. And that, you've just sort of told me something that I didn't even think of. So you're saying in effect then that, we go down the route of searching. We know that Google loves WordPress blogs and so on and so forth. And the key is we can actually do a podcast, then we can put audio, we load it up, and we can go down that same normal channel of putting in keywords and everything. So when people actually come and they see a link that's relevant to what they're looking at, it will actually be a podcast listing.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the blog. Wow.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that just doing what I've just told you so far generates probably about $3,000 a month of income for me just on 2 or 3 products alone. And so if you were to do, and I haven't done this forever, but if you were to go and do a Google search for JK Audio and then broadcast host, and then interview. And I haven't done this forever, but I just did this JK Audio broadcast host interview in Google. Then the number 1 result is JK Audio, the company who makes this. And the second listing is podcastanswerman.com/JK Audio.
Fantastic.
And when people go there, they can actually see, and hear and view me talking about this particular thing. And of course, if they click on my link and purchase it, I get a commission. Or if they go and do a search for Heil PR40 for podcasting, it takes them to podcastanswerman.com/Heil PR40, and people can buy that product right from me. And
fantastic.
So what you're talking about, yes, that is one of the benefits of doing this. Now, the thing is everything that I've told you so far, what we're going to call that is recording your audio or video and putting it on the web. So technically speaking, we don't yet have a podcast. We have a majority of what you need to do a podcast. But so a podcast is recording your audio, putting it on the web, and publishing it to your website. But there's one more critical key ingredient to turn this into a podcast, and that is called RSS. RSS stands for really simple syndication, and a lot of people are going to be familiar with the fact that you can subscribe to many different blogs using an RSS reader, like Google Reader. So if you go to google.com/reader, you can actually plug in the RSS feeds of all the different blogs you like to read and plug them into this one program, and then all you have to do is log into that, and it will tell you if there's anything new, versus you going to all the different bookmarked pages of all the sites that you like to see if they might possibly have something new.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Now, I remember when I sort of first went to your website, podcastanswerman.com, and we'll talk about that a little. You had just the coolest video on there, and actually, if you'll allow this, I'm probably going to sort of create an email responder out to everybody with a link for that, so that they can actually watch that video itself. Because you see, it just really covered all the bases. You came up with the numbers of how many people are driving to work every day, how many people sort of go to the gym, how many people are there. And then I'm sort of going, well, yeah, okay, these are very nice, fancy stats. And then somewhere along the line, I thought, I get it. They could be listening to you. And the other thing that you said as well, it's something that really grates on me when I'm listening to a radio interview, and someone comes on and they start talking, and you can tell they've got more to say, Cliff. And then he says, oh, look, well, thanks a lot for coming. We've got to go to the news now, or we've got the traffic and travel reports. And you even brought that up in your presentation, where you said, hey, listen, you get the chance to say everything. So I thought that was fantastic, and that went such a long way to discussing the merits of a podcast and why it would be in everybody's interest to certainly consider doing something like that.
Exactly. And the 3 things: you listen to what you want, when you want, and where you want. You put it all the control in the beholder of your content. They can listen to what they want. They can listen to it when they want. You don't have to be live on the radio when they're available, or they don't have to be available when you're on the radio. And they can listen to it where? They can listen to it in their car, at the gym. They can listen to it while they're walking their dog, or even working in their garden. And by the way, the link, and I absolutely, please do send anybody you want to the link, but it's podcastanswerman.com/business is the direct link, and people can see that video I put together. It is something I'm very passionate about, is the value of audio podcasting.
Good. Now, Cliff, obviously, in your interpretation, and I think you you had that very amusing analogy of what you use podcasting for. The fact that it's a marketing tool. It should be in line with everything else you do, your direct mail and so on and so forth. And again, for me, that was music to my ears, because we. And again, I suppose I've got to refer this to the small business. What is marketing? People are like, what's marketing? And I think in its purest form, I like to say that, it's the series of the activities that you do to promote your product. So 1 minute you're doing a direct mailer. Next minute you got something on your website. Next time you're doing some pay-per-click. Another time you're podcasting, and so on and so forth. So it covers that. Now, with podcasting in social media, and with this whole new social media frenzy, if you like, how does podcasting fit into that? And what would your sort of advice be as far as what people need to consider when looking to sort of incorporate podcasting into their social media cluster?
Sure. Well, and absolutely. And what I would do is I want to give you my very simplistic understanding of what marketing is. And when I think of the word marketing, I think it's communicating who I am, or communicating what my brand is about. And so all of those different tools and everything that is, so basically when I say podcasting is a marketing tool, it is a tool to communicate who I am and what I have to offer. And it's not, let me convince you to buy from me right now. It's let me develop a relationship with you. And let me let you in to see the bigger picture of who we are. We're not here to always sell you something. Let us show you who we are. Let us share with you why our business got started. Let us share with you our story. And see, this is a place for you to communicate the human side of your business. And I mean, I believe every business has a story. I mean, why does any business exist today? There's some history. And and you look at Zappos. You've heard of Zappos, right? And Zappos, people are paying tons and tons and tons of money out there. Or actually, they're paying a little bit of money, but tons and tons of people are paying a little bit of money, making this company lots of money just to read the book about their culture and how their business got started. And so that's the thing. This is an opportunity. I think podcasting is a great opportunity for somebody who's in the know, who has the story, who can represent the story of your company well, the culture, the brand of who you are, the identity. Somebody who can communicate the identity of who you are as a company and what you offer and why you offer it. This is the power of audio podcasting. It really does give that opportunity to communicate that in a way that doesn't come across just in written word. And of course, and here's the thing: I'm a huge believer in audio podcasting, but I also do written blog posts that contain diagrams that I couldn't just explain to you in detail. I'm not going to sit here and try to give you a thorough explanation of how every aspect of podcasting works, because I would need to show you some visual aids. And so I recognize, my limitations with audio. And so I tell you stories with ideas and your mind's eye. But I can also use written blog posts with picture diagrams. I can use video, and I can actually demonstrate products and services through video. And if I actually say, you know what, I'll give you a perfect example. Podcast Answer Man, I've been waiting forever to buy a wireless microphone system. Now, I literally did a 15-minute review on the wireless microphone system that I purchased. And I actually show you every single little intricate bit, little tiny nook and cranny and bits and pieces of why I love the piece of equipment that I purchased. Now, I'm not going to talk about that for 15 minutes in my podcast, but for 3 minutes in my podcast, I'm going to say, hey guys, I want to let you know I have been holding off on doing video work forever, but I'm really excited about video, and I purchased this brand new microphone system, and I'm very excited about it. I know a lot of you out there have been waiting to hear me review and give you a recommendation for a wireless microphone system. I have a 15-minute video that gives you every detail you could ever want to know, and it's over at podcastanswerman.com/UWP. And I'll have links to that in the show notes for this episode at podcastanswerman.com. And so it's a way for you to communicate other things that you've blogged about, other things you've done video about. It's just this. I guess the way. Companies have sales meetings, right? Some bigger companies have sales meetings, and they want to communicate things. And instead of sending out a blasted email, sometimes they do a conference call, right? Or sometimes they have meetings. And so what I'm saying is that, there is another way to communicate with your customers, with the people in your community who love your brand. There's a way to communicate that with them that's not just textual based. And it doesn't have to be video. And one of the things with video is, by the way, I'm a huge proponent of video, but video, it's time consuming. And and you have
it's I'll tell you, some of that editing malarkey, my goodness me, takes me back to my college days. Oh dear. But video is now, as you said, I think time and place for it. I also believe there is something quite poignant about being able to talk about something, whether people admit it or not. If you create a podcast where you are talking about something like this, you are seen as more of an authority, aren't you?
There is no question about that. I can't even remember the words that you opened up this episode with, or the last episode, but you said, Cliff Ravenscraft is the premier authority. And it's so funny because I remember the words that you used to describe me. I would have described a guy named Jason Van Orden, 5 years ago.
Yeah, sure. He's Pat's mentor, isn't he?
He certainly is, and he's somebody that I look up to. I met him several years ago, and I when I remember talking to him, it's like, this is the premier authority in podcasting and stuff like that. But and when I started podcastanswerman.com, I only had 18 months experience 18 months to 2 years of experience in podcasting. And I consider myself to still be pretty much a hobbyist who's moving more into a professional direction with it. But still in my mind, my skill level was still really low. However, anybody who subscribed to my podcast, my skill level was through the roof, and they saw me as an authority. And I have risen to a place of authority because of the people who subscribe to my podcast, who continue. Every single time you say that I'm an authority, I become an authority in this to anybody you've told that I'm an authority. And
no, that's yeah.
But here's the deal: I could not be an authority on the topic if I am not out there actively creating content. What makes me the authority is not that I call myself an authority. It's the fact that I am devoting my time, energy, and attention on this area of expertise. And so there's hardly anybody in this world that I can think of who spends more time thinking about how to do podcasting better, what better tools exist for podcasting that are just now coming out, how can I apply this tool, this social networking site, this special plugin for WordPress, this little thing, how can I make this better for building a community around podcasting? The reason why I'm an authority in this is because it's my general area of expertise that I focus every bit of my attention on. And so people recognize that, and they continually come week after week. More than 205 episodes of Podcast Answer Man. That's 205 hours of me talking about what I'm learning every week. And that does make me an authority.
No, fantastic. Now, I guess, if we go back to our very first conversation, last year when we spoke, and I know it was a typical thing for me to say, I suppose, and it'll be a typical thing for anyone to say. It was the whole thing about saying, Well, listen, we look at your website, and there's that really cool photo about when you started, and I think that was so poignant that you took the time to put that up and show, how your equipment and everything has evolved. Now, I've got a couple of theories on this, Cliff, and so I need you to keep me honest on it. When I was doing Six of the Best, the report, and I was talking about YouTube, I specifically mentioned YouTube as the actual sort of, social media cluster and so on and so forth. However, I'm just as soon talking about video. YouTube tends to be that channel in which they're doing it. Now, with podcasting, obviously, I am trying to encourage people to let their voice be heard, physically heard. Of course, they're going to write and they're going to be there. So my question to you, if you remember when we spoke, I just said, listen, Cliff, this is something I clearly want to do, but, it looks like this equipment costs an arm and a leg. Is there such a thing as podcasting on a budget?
There is. There certainly is. And I want to tell you, first and foremost, let me just say this. The minimum that anybody, I think, needs to start with to get even a halfway decent sound, and I do mean halfway decent, is $35. And you could go to any electronics store, pick yourself up a Logitech USB headset, plug it into the computer you already have, download a piece of software called Audacity. It is absolutely free, doesn't cost you a penny. It's called Audacity. You can plug in your USB $35 headset, and I'm talking about with the little headphones on both sides and a little mic off to the side. Mm-hmm. All right? And then what you do is, and by the way, point that microphone down below your chin. Don't put it right in front of your mouth. Otherwise, you'll sound like all the time.
So you sound like you're coming up with the latest sort of hip-hop tune, huh?
Exactly. And so point that little microphone down below your chin. Your audio will still be picked up, and hit record on Audacity's free software, and by golly, you're recording your very first podcast episode. And
as simple as that, Cliff,
as simple
honestly.
as that. And then when you're done, you hit stop. And now, personally, I'm going to get a little geeky here. I'm going to tell you that you can install this thing called a lame encoder that you can. The Audacity website will tell you how to download, and you can export that recording as an MP3 file using that built-in stuff. I'm going to recommend that you not do that. And instead, I would recommend that you consider taking that or that recording that you get in Audacity, exporting it as a WAV file. And that's actually built in. You don't have to do anything extra to make that happen. And you export it as a WAV file. And then there's a process that you can do using iTunes, which is free software as well. Anybody, both Windows and PC, can use. And there's a way for you to take the WAV file and convert it to an MP3 file. Okay. All right. And so I would recommend, if you're trying to save money, do this on a budget, use iTunes to convert it to MP3. And by the way, don't convert it to AAC. Don't convert it to M4A. Don't release it as a WAV file. It should definitely be an MP3 file. And when you get into it, you're probably going to say, okay, oh gosh, well, he didn't tell me what kilobits. I'm going to recommend 128 kilobits per second if you're doing stereo, or 64 kilobits per second if you're doing mono. That will make sense when you get into the software, trust me. So basically for $35, you could record your voice and you're good to go. Now, here's the thing. Your audio is going to sound like somebody who invested $35 into getting this thing started. And that may not be a problem for you. Whereas, and by the way, in 2005, when I started podcasting, if you had $35 invested in your equipment, you sounded as good as anybody who podcasted.
Really?
But today, there are a lot of radio stations, NPR, you've got a bunch of other people, and then you've got several hundred of my clients who have been coached by me on how to podcast, and people are becoming smarter about the type of equipment they use. And you can hear the quality of this show sounds a lot different than the average podcast out there. I'm using a very high-end, high-quality microphone and stuff like that. If I had to do anything, if I wanted to give some advice to save all of your people listening to this, because there's a good chance much of that some of your audience is going to go out and get a book on podcasting or read some blog posts that might not be mine. And there's a lot of bad information out there that's going to recommend that they go out and get these USB condenser microphones. Stay away from Blue Snowballs. Stay away from the Blue Yetis. All these these podcasting microphones that sound so great and everybody raves about, they're horrible. And they will make you sound like an amateur sitting in a tunnel. All right? So if you're not...
And you know, the interesting thing here and the great part of this, you know, both parts of this conversation, Cliff, is that if folks take the time to Google Cliff Ravenscraft, you visit his website, you'll even see a listing in Wikipedia, you will know that this man knows what he is talking about. So if there is any genuine bona fide information that you want to take, you know, listen to this man, and you know, we will continue to chat with Cliff so we can get this, because I think this is very important, isn't it? Because you see, do you know the real painful thing about it, and I've been in this situation myself, Cliff, is that when we do seek hope, you know, there's just, unfortunately, there are people out there who just do not have the sort of, you know, background and expertise on something as they possibly let out that they do, you know?
Yeah.
And this is why I think what I've tried to do and what we will always do in Matrix Global Media is anytime we bring somebody on here to do something on audio, it's somebody who has been there, done that, written the T-shirt, and has also, you know, seen what it's like on the other side. You know, when you talk about making $11,000 when, you know, previously you were making $87,000 with your sort of insurance job. So, you know, your advice and your background has just been so very much appreciated, and I can't thank you enough.
Can I
Cliff,
share
before
one
we
other
finish,
thing?
Sorry, carry on.
Before you ask me that last question, can I share one update with you? Because I know we talked about that in our first part one of this conversation that you and I had. I had mentioned that I went from $87,000 a year down to I made no more than $11,000. Actually, it was less than $11,000 that first year that I did this full time. By the way, I started January 2008. As we're recording this right now, it's April 2011. So it's just over 3 years that I've been doing this full time, okay, as my career. In March of this year, I made $23,000 that month.
Wow.
So I just want to say this. I'm actually making more money in 3 years of doing what I love for a living every single day of the week. I make more doing what I love for a living after only 3 years of doing it full time than I did after 9. Actually, no, when I left insurance, I was there for 11 years. I make more now than I made after 11 years of being one of the most successful insurance agents in the country.
That's fantastic. Cliff, just to finish off with, and you know, we haven't even talked about this offline, but I've got a theory on this, and you know, again, probably my sort of background tutelage that I enjoyed at Troy University a few years ago in journalism and that, but would we, you know, and I know it's something you've done before, but, you know, I think one marketing tool that is incredibly powerful, I'm going to encourage anybody that I work with to do their own podcast and to get the message out. But, you know, could we maybe talk about, and we can see, you know, how it all develops and before sort of speaking to others about it, but do you think there are some legs in maybe even something like what we've done now for a company, a business? So let's say they're in insurance, or they're a personal injury lawyer, or there's something else like that, where it's almost like, yes, and it's possibly slightly staged, but not over the top, where they have an opportunity to talk about their business. So, you know, when they're sending out a brochure, they could just as well be sending out an hour conversation where somebody else is asking them about their business, why they bring credibility to the table, and, you know, the lessons they've learned and the angles and the areas to go. Would that qualify as podcasting?
It would qualify as It would qualify as audio content that is good for marketing, hands down. What qualifies something for podcasting is whether or not you make that deliverable in an episodic fashion that's deliverable via RSS. And I hope I didn't get too geeky and technical and stuff like that. But what I mean by that is that, yeah, I mean, there are lots of podcasts out there where the content is interviewing people about a particular niche business or field of expertise or whatever the case may be. Podcasts do not have to be continually ongoing productions. In fact, I've produced more than 24 different podcasts of my own, and not all of those are weekly still going today. I did. If you go to virtualassistantpodcast.com, I did 38 episodes of what my experience of having a virtual assistant is in my small business. And after 38 episodes, I'm like, I think I've covered pretty much everything I'm going to cover now. And I ended that. And so you can podcast about anything you want. And I can assure you that if it's sharing something of value, there's got to be people in this world somewhere that would see the value and they would listen.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Cliff, again, I just want to thank you. And as I said to you before, you bring so much to the table. We just had to sort of make this a two-part conversation. And would it be okay if from time to time we get you back here just to sort of give us a few updates on what's going on in your world and that you can continue to enlighten people? Would that be okay?
Absolutely. I would love it. And if you don't mind, I know that in your outline, you wanted to ask one question, and it's one question I would love to answer just to wrap this thing up was, if there was something that I wish I would have known when I started, can I just share with you?
Of course, no. I was just very conscious of your time. So,
yes.
But if you've got time to sort of, share a few gems with us, that'll be terrific.
This is the big one. I wish I would have known about the power of a mailing list. And I know a lot, because as a podcaster, I'm thinking all I want to do is I want to get people subscribed to my podcast. I want to get people subscribed to my podcast. I want people to come to my website. I want people to leave me a blog, put comments, and I want, all of this other stuff. But man, I tell you what, it is a very, very, very good goal to get as many of your subscribers to your podcast to subscribe to your mailing list. Because if they're connected to your podcast, if they're subscribing to your podcast, that means they obviously care about you. They know, like, and trust you. And if they know, like, and trust you, that means chances are they'd be willing to receive email communications from you. Now, you have to very carefully choose what kind of communications you're going to give via your email and let people know that ahead of time so that they know what to expect. For Podcast Answer Man, I will tell you this. I just started my very first mailing list for Podcast Answer Man in October of 2010. My very first email went out to less than 200 people and generated $16,000 in income.
Yeah. Do you know the interesting thing, Cliff? And while you have been saying that, I had a chuckle because I've actually brought up my report, 6 of the best, and I put in a bit of bonus coverage at the end. So I mentioned to you the 6 things that we were looking at were Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, the blog, and the podcasting. The very last thing, and I'm looking at it here, was I put autoresponder emails, your number one priority. So I actually did 3 or 4 pages because I think the other thing with social media, particularly with the likes of Facebook and other things, the person who says, listen, I got 6,000 people that like me on Facebook, if they don't have a good number of those people in an email list, goodness knows what could happen. And I just believe it myself. I think it's the number one thing that I have stressed and will continue to stress when we create landing pages for people. One-page landing pages, it always has a place where they can get names and addresses and set up an autoresponder. And in this day and age, you look at some of the servers, and I've sort of listed them here. You even get a few of them where up to 2,000 names, it won't cost you a penny.
Yeah.
And it's the one, and unfortunately, it's kind of like the one I got from you the other day, and when you had sort of said, hey, listen, guys, I'm back, and this is what I've been up to. It was interesting. You weren't trying to sell us anything. You told us where you've been, what you've been up to, why you've got all sorts of exciting new stuff. Cliff, I could take an email like that from you all the time. The problem is we have that stereotype in our mind where every time we get an email, we get these wonderfully presented HTML ones with all these photos, with a photo of something, and zap, a big price on it. Something else, zap, a big price. And I'm just thinking, listen, use these emails to talk to people, nurture that relationship.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the one thing that I did know when I did start, and it's the one thing that I wish everybody who was getting started would know, is that it's not about the sales, it's about the passion and the relationship. Those are make those your first priorities. Podcast and talk about what you're passionate about, not what's going to generate you the most income, but talk about your passion and share the real person of who you are. Build relationships with your audience, and I believe honestly, pursue your passion. The money will follow.
No, fantastic. Well, sir, as always, just absolutely great visiting with you, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you and to monitor your progress. And could you just give us your website address once again so everybody can go on there and visit and learn more about you, Cliff?
Absolutely. Just head over to podcastanswerman.com.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me. And folks, once again, I hope you've enjoyed this two-part special on podcasting with the leading authority on all things podcasting, Cliff Ravenscraft. This is Mucha Marapa from Matrix Global Media, and thanks ever so much for joining us. Bye-bye.